It started like any other quiet Saturday morning in our mountain cabin. Sunlight filtered through the tall pines, and birdsong echoed across the valley. My wife, Anna, was preparing coffee while I double-checked the motion sensor cameras we'd installed around the perimeter. We weren't paranoid, just cautious. Ever since we'd bought this remote property, 3 acres with an old but charming log cabin, we knew we'd attract some attention, especially from her. Her name was Janice, but everyone called her the HOA Queen, nosy, self-important middle-aged woman who had appointed herself enforcer of rules in a place that had no active HOA. That's right, this area had a defunct HOA, dissolved 5 years before we moved in. Yet that hadn't stopped Janice from handing out printed violations to neighbors for things like unauthorized shrub height or unsanctioned paint colors. She lived a few cabins down the hill, and had tried more than once to snoop around our property under the pretense of a routine cabin inspection. We ignored her. The cabin was ours. We'd paid cash, and there was no legal HOA to answer to, but that Saturday, Janice wasn't taking no for an answer. We heard the crunch of gravel before we saw her car, a rusted blue Subaru with the crooked HOA enforcement magnet stuck to the door. I watched her step out, clipboard in hand, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun like some cartoon villain. "Good morning," she called out, smiling stiffly. "Just here for a walkthrough." Standard procedure. Anna positioned herself between Janice and the porch steps, calm but firm. "There is no active HOA here, Janice. You're not coming onto our property." Janice's smile wavered. "I'm afraid you don't understand. This is part of community oversight." "No, you don't understand," Anna cut in. "You've been told more than once. You are not allowed on our land." That's when Janice's face hardened. She reached into her jacket and flashed what looked like a laminated ID. "I have authority," Anna snorted. "From where? Your printer?" Janice's eyes flicked behind Anna, perhaps calculating whether she could rush past. Anna stepped forward and blocked the gravel path with her body. "Back in your car, Janice." Janice's eyes narrowed, but then she spotted the mounted camera by our porch. She froze. I stood behind the window watching the scene when something unbelievable happened. A sheriff's cruiser pulled in behind Janice's Subaru, tires grinding to a stop. She turned around, startled. The deputy stepped out, one hand resting on his belt, and looked straight at Janice. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to speak with you. There's a warrant out of Jefferson County." And his mouth dropped open. Janice paled. "What?" She took a step back, blinking, as if the deputy's words had slapped her. "A warrant? There must be a mistake," she stammered, glancing from the deputy to Anna, then to me as I stepped out onto the porch. The deputy didn't flinch. "You are Janice R. Hightower, correct?" "Dobb, June 3rd, 1965. Janice's lips trembled. "Yes, but what is this about?" "I'll explain in a moment. Please place your hands where I can see them now." That got her full attention. She recoiled as if he'd asked her to commit a crime right there in the yard. "You can't just, this is outrageous. I'm a respected community figure. I'm with the HOA," and crossed her arms. "There is no HOA." The deputy remained composed. "Ma'am, I'm not here about an HOA. Jefferson County issued a bench warrant for failure to appear in court, fraud charges related to falsifying official documentation and trespassing." Janice's face turned ghostly pale. "Fraud." I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Everything suddenly made sense. Those printed violation letters she'd been stuffing in mailboxes, the fake ID badge, the clipboard full of supposed property assessments. She'd always looked ridiculous, but now it was clear she'd crossed a legal line long ago. Anna let out a slow whistle. "Looks like that authority badge wasn't just printed, it was criminal." Janice spun toward her. "You set me up." Anna blinked, stunned. "Are you serious? You drove onto our land again after being warned, after threatening us." "All we did was say no." Janice was visibly shaking now. "I need to make a call. My husband's a lawyer." "You'll all be sorry." The deputy wasn't having it. "You'll have the opportunity to make a phone call at the station." He stepped forward and gently, but firmly took her arm. "Ma'am, please don't resist." For a split second, I thought she might bolt. She glanced at the woods, the road behind her, even at her own car, as if it might magically drive her away, but there was nowhere to go. She lowered her head and allowed the deputy to guide her toward the cruiser. "This is harassment," she muttered under her breath. "No," the deputy replied flatly. "It's the law catching up to you." And I stood in silence as he read her Miranda rights. Her protest still echoed through the trees long after the cruiser disappeared down the road. I looked at Anna. "Well, that escalated," she smirked. "Told you the cameras would pay off." But neither of us realized this was just the beginning. The silence after Janice's arrest hung in the air like a fog. For the first time in weeks, there was no surveillance car creeping by. No phony citations taped to our door, just pine needles rustling and the distant hum of a squirrel chattering. As if it had something to say about what had just gone down, Anna leaned against the porch railing, staring at the gravel road where the sheriff's cruiser had vanished. "You think that's it? You think she's done?" I shrugged. "I hope so," I said, "but I doubt it." Something about her reaction, how quickly she accused us of setting her up, left a weird feeling in my gut. That kind of paranoia doesn't come from a one-off mistake. It comes from knowing you've been skating on thin ice for a long time. Later that afternoon, I took a stroll down the hill, not to snoop, just to verify. Her cabin sat on a slightly sloped lot, hidden behind a tangle of hedges she had declared native preservation foliage. I wasn't going to break in or do anything illegal, but when I saw the back shed door wide open, flapping in the breeze, I couldn't ignore it. I stood at the edge of her property and called the sheriff's office. I told them the place appeared unsecured, and given the morning's arrest, someone ought to check it out. They said a deputy would swing by, but with the backlog of calls, it could take a while. So I waited. That's when I heard the loud clack of a cabinet slamming inside the shed. I froze. Someone was in there, but Janice was supposed to be in custody. I stepped closer and quietly called out, "Hello?" Silence. Then I saw him. A man in his early 50s, balding, wearing a stained windbreaker. He emerged from the shadows holding a box of papers. He jumped when he spotted me and nearly dropped the whole thing. "You're from up the hill?" he asked, clearly trying to sound casual. "Yeah," I replied, eyeing the papers. "Who are you?" He hesitated too long. "I'm her cousin, just collecting some of her things." "The sheriff told me I could." "Funny," I said. "They told me no one was cleared to enter yet." The man's jaw twitched. "You calling me a liar?" "No," I said slowly, backing up a step. "I'm calling the sheriff's office again." That spooked him. He shoved the box back into the shed, bolted for a small rusted pickup parked behind the house, and tore down the road before I could even catch his plate. When the deputy arrived 20 minutes later, I told him everything. He went into the shed, took one look at the abandoned box, and let out a low whistle. "Sir, you might have just walked into something much bigger than HOA drama." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" He pulled out a folder marked Community Financial Oversight Board. Then he flipped through the manila folder, a deep scowl settling on his face. "This isn't just some Karen drama, sir. This looks like financial fraud on a county level." I leaned in slightly. How would Janice even get access to these documents? He held up a stamped sheet with the forged letterhead, Community Financial Oversight Board, but the logo looks like it's been photocopied a dozen times. She made these. None of this is real. There's no such board in this region. These appear to be fake assessments she's been mailing out, charging illegal HOA fines and threatening liens if people didn't pay up. I blinked. "Wait, you're telling me she's been scamming the entire neighborhood?" "Looks that way," he muttered, slipping the folder into an evidence bag. "We've had reports from surrounding counties of a woman matching her description pulling similar stunts. She acts like she's reviving dead HOAs, then bullies folks into handing over money under threat of legal action. And the guy I saw?" I asked. "Could be a co-conspirator. We'll run the plate once we pull traffic cam footage. For now, stay alert." That night, Annie and I sat by the fireplace, replaying everything in our heads. The fake ID, the clipboard, the made-up violations. Janice had been parading around like the dictator of a forgotten kingdom, and people had believed her. "You know," Anna said, swirling her tea, "if she hadn't tried to come up here again, she probably would have gotten away with it." I nodded. "Yeah, and if you hadn't blocked her path, she might have gotten inside. Who knows what she would have planted or claimed. We didn't sleep well that night, even with Janice behind bars for the moment. There was an eerie sense that her grip had reached farther than we'd realized, and we were right. Over the next week, 4 other neighbors came forward. All of them had received mandatory maintenance invoices from Janice's so-called board. 2 had actually paid, 1 even forked over $900 to avoid the property suspension she threatened. Each had been too embarrassed to speak up until they heard about the arrest. Turns out Janice had collected thousands over the past year using this scheme. And it wasn't just our mountain stretch, she'd pulled the same scam in 2 other rural communities before ours. Always choosing isolated places where legal oversight was weak, and residents were scattered. A few days later, the county prosecutor filed a multi-jurisdictional complaint: fraud, impersonation of a public official, criminal trespassing, and that was just the start. Anna stood on the porch that evening, watching the sun dip behind the pines. Funny, she said. She thought we were the problem. I wrapped my arm around her. Guess she never expected her own fake world to come crashing down over a simple blocked path. And just like that, the mountain was quiet again. 1 block driveway, 1 real arrest warrant. Karma doesn't always need a grand stage, sometimes it just needs someone willing to say no. If you think this entitled busybody finally got what she deserved, hit that like button, drop justice served in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where karma hits back hard. You won't want to miss the next one.